Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and over the last few weeks of us covering regular class updates over on the War Within Alpha, a handful of playstyles have been catching my eye. Things like Warlocks, Mages, and in particular Shamans are some of the classes that I'm the most excited for. Of course, I'm always considering my Rogue as a potential viable main going forward, but with so many insane changes over in the Alpha, it's hard not to notice all of these different playstyles. Especially for the class of Shaman, which we've actually covered kind of closely with the hero specs of the Totemic, which I was the most excited for, as well as the Stormbringer appearing way later than everybody else over on the Alpha. So as part of our regular class coverage over on the War Within Alpha, I wanted to take a hard look over at the class of Shaman and take a look at their entire kit of hero talents from the Farseer, Stormbringer, and the Totemic, go over all of their talents, the thematics, and how they're going to alter the playstyle for enhancement, elemental, and restoration. And I gotta say, I'm actually very excited about the class of Shaman going into the War Within so far. But before we dive deeper, if you guys enjoyed these kind of class updates on the War Within Alpha, be sure to follow the channel. Otherwise, let's take a look at the Shaman. So when taking a look at the Shaman hero talents, I kind of want to do them in a chronological order from the first one that was added, which was Farseer, and then move our way into Tempest and then into the Totemic, with the last two being particularly exciting for me. So starting off with the Farseer, I feel like a lot of players, when they first read the hero talents for the Farseer, were a little bit blindsided by its main focus. As the Farseer at first seems like a hero spec that's all about conjuring and summoning allies and pets that kind of do damage for you automatically, but it's actually so much more than that. For the Farseer, we actually have a flavor text which reads, Farseers harness your spiritual magic, improving your spellcasting capabilities, which is very important here, and empowering you to call upon the spirits of your ancestors to aid you and your allies in combat. So there's going to be a mixture of both, but there's two elements here that are very important. Empowering you to call upon spirits, that's going to be a pretty big component, but also improving your spellcasting capabilities. For many people, they just kind of assume that your spirits and ancestors is literally the only primary form of gameplay of the ancestor, or the Farseer rather, but there's actually so much more to this hero spec once you start digging into some of the talents. But yes, the primary ability is going to be called the Ancestors. Primordial Wave calls an ancestor to your side for 6 seconds. Whenever you cast a healing or damaging spell, the ancestor will mimic that spell, casting a similar version of it. Another unique thing about these ancestors is the fact that they are going to resemble whatever you are. So if you're a Draenei, your ancestors are going to be other Draenei. If you're an Orc, they're also going to be Orcs, Dwarves get Dwarves, Magha Orcs will get Magha Orcs specifically, and everybody else gets their own ancestor depending on the race choice that you have. So there's a cool bit of elements there. So visually, you are going to notice that a Shaman is a Farseer, as they call an ancestors for combat, and you can actually spawn a lot of these ancestors as we get through the talent trees. Let's start off with some of the simple talents such as Elemental Reverb, where Elemental Blast gains an additional charge and deals 5% more damage. With this one playing around Primordial, you are going to be encouraged to spam Lava Burst as much as possible, and being able to hold 3 charges of Lava Burst means you're going to be integrating this ability pretty regularly as part of your basic rotation. In the middle row, we have some new ways to interact with the ancestors, such as routine communication, where Lava Burst casts have an 8% chance to call an ancestor, or you could simply make those ancestors last a little bit longer, which gives you a bit of RNG versus consistency. Further down, we have new ways to modify ancestors. Whenever an ancestor fades, they have a 50% chance to call on a new one just to replace the one you already had, or your ancestor spells can be made 20% more powerful, so whenever they are active, they are a bit more effective. In our next row, we have Spirit Walker's Momentum. Using spells with a cast time increases the duration of Spirit Walker's Grace and Spirit Walker's Aegis by 1 second up to a maximum of 4 seconds, which simply grants you a little bit extra value since you are going to be casting Lava Burst a lot, which can proc with the Lava Surge to be instant cast, but if you do need to be moving while casting, this is going to be that part of the hero spec that talks about enhancing your spell casting abilities. So you are going to be able to spend more time moving while casting, which is actually kind of huge. It's a massive convenience, and you'll actually notice just how much movement you have as a Shaman, which is actually a huge benefit. The fact that this playstyle is going to be high in mobility. In the middle row, we have Primordial Capacity, which increases your maximum Maelstrom by 25, which allows abilities such as Elemental Blast to be more encouraged, since you can now hold up quite a bit more Maelstrom to be able to chain a bunch of Elemental Blasts. On the left side, we have Offering from Beyond. When an ancestor is called, they reduce the cooldown of your Fire Elemental and Storm Elemental by 10 seconds. Big fan of the way that ancestors are going to interact with some of your major cooldowns. In the final row, we have Final Calling. When an ancestor expires, they'll cast Elemental Blast at a nearby enemy. And the Elemental Blast itself does decent bit of damage, as you can actually see. Whenever the ancestor fades in just a little bit, there it goes. And it also grants you the Elemental Blast Critical Strike benefit, or one of the Elemental Blast buffs. So you can have all these ancestors casting Elemental Blast, which grants you the benefits of the secondary stats that come with the Elemental Blast ability. This is actually kind of huge because this makes ancestors a little bit more interactive, as they'll directly empower and enhance your Shaman gameplay. In the middle row, we have Maelstrom Supremacy. Increases the damage of your Earth Shock, Elemental Blast, Earthquakes by 8%, and the healing of Healing Surge by 8%, so a little bit of self-survivability stuff, but also quite a bit more damage involved. On the left-hand side, we actually do have a defensive bonuses here, either Natural Harmony, which reduces the cooldown of Nature's Guardian by 10 seconds. That is this talent over here that gives you emergency additional health whenever you drop below 35% of your max health. So with Natural Harmony, that cooldown of that emergency heal is reduced by 10 seconds and causes you to heal for additional 5% of your maximum health. Or if you prefer a more passive option, we have the Earthen Communion, where Earth Shield has an additional 3 charges. It heals you for 25% more, which gives it a little bit more of a defensive value, but also a little bit bigger for Restoration Shaman. Your final capstone ability is going to be Ancestral Swiftness. Your next healing or damaging spell is instant cast and costs no mana and deals 10% increased damage and healing, which makes it an ability you'll want to invest into one of your harder hitting skills such as Elemental Blast. If you already know Nature Swiftness, it is then replaced with Ancestral Swiftness, so you can't have both abilities, but it also causes you Ancestral Swiftness if you are talented into Nature Swiftness to call on upon an ancestor to your side, so you'll want to commit a talent point down into Nature Swiftness, flowing from the Spirit Walker's Grace with whatever upgrade you choose afterwards. Yeah, you will definitely want to run Ancestral Swiftness and Nature Swiftness together just to make sure you call upon your ancestors more regularly. And that kind of creates a bit of a gameplay loop where you have some forms of instant cast capabilities. Whether you want to spend it on a heal or whether you even want to spend it on a lava surge, you totally can do that. But ideally, you'll want to spend it on an Elemental Blast in order to make sure you also get to summon a powerful ancestor. So then you can have a barrage of a bunch of ancestors attacking the enemy all at once, which actually looks kind of awesome if you can get a bunch of them rolling all at the same time. And if you can cleave with your lava burst, that's more potential ancestors that you can even summon, so it makes it a little bit stronger overall, and you have yourself a little mini army of ghosts following you around as you cast your abilities. But even as the ancestors themselves are there to help you deal additional damage, you do notice some of the little things that the hero spec does offer, with more lava bursts, with more instant cast with Ancestral Swiftness, and with overall more power that you get from all your fire-based abilities. There's enough interactions in the Elemental Shaman talent tree to make a lava build function, whether you want to play a cleave lava build or a single target lava build, and have those abilities interact with abilities such as Elemental Blast. And how you can enhance the ability of Elemental Blast currently works right now on the live version of the game, and it continues to work in the very same vein right now on the alpha. So even though Farseer at first seems like a hero spec that's going to be heavily leaning into the ghosts and the ancestors summon, which are going to be a considerable portion of your overall damage, there are also ways to enhance the actual Elemental Shaman themselves, and that can also be observed when you take a look at Restoration Shaman with the hero spec involved. For Restoration, the Farseer is going to be a little bit different because Unleash Life is going to be the ability that's now going to call upon an ancestor instead of having Primordial Bolt be tied to this ability usage. Unleash Life has a 15-second cooldown, so you actually get quite a lot of value out of all the different ancestors that you can summon. But then Unleash Life also plays around being able to combo abilities together, whether it is Riptide, Healing Wave, Healing Surge, or AoE heals such as Chain Heal, Healing Rain, Downpour, or even Wellspring. So there's quite a bit of interactions that you can even combine together as a Restoration Shaman, which I think has been my favorite part of Resto, is how you can combine healing abilities together to create more powerful combinations. A lot of your abilities, however, are going to be revolved around Riptide instead of your Lava Burst when it comes to summoning up all these extra ancestors as a Farseer. Besides this, you also have a couple of neat benefits such as extra mana and tidal waves being able to stack up to 6 times, When ancestors are summoned, they also help reduce the cooldown of Riptide, which allows you to spread even more Riptides all across your entire raid or party. Every time an ancestor fades, they also apply a Hydro Bubble to an ally, which is an absorb effect. But an absorb can be huge when it comes to pure healing situations, because it allows your heals or additional heals to be applied to an ally, giving them extra protection to layer over their health bar, which is kind of massive. And the amount of interaction that you have with Riptide on the Shaman can be witnessed in just the sheer amount of talents that interact with the Riptide ability in their class talent tree, or rather their spec talent tree more than anything. Together with Primordial Wave, you can set up for a massive huge heal that affects every ally with a Riptide. And even with things such as Elemental Reverb granting you an extra charge of Lava Burst making it deal additional damage, you can even create an additional layer of combos together with things like Master of the Elements and the instant cast Lava Burst provided with a Lava Surge. So you can set up a massive bit of healing that can affect multiple allies at once using Riptide's healing over time effects that can be spread to multiple allies in order to chain multiple heals at the same time. Which, like I said before, Farseer does seem at first like an ancestor summoner type of playstyle where ancestors are going to do everything for you, but there's so many other cool enhancements that it provides for both elemental and restoration that are going to be noticeable when it comes to day-to-day gameplay. And with that, now that I spent a great deal of time gushing all about Farseer, I want to move on into the Tempest, which is one of the two hero specs that I'm the most excited for. Don't get me wrong, Farseer is actually a lot better than I expected it, but the Stormbringer as well as the Totemic are very exciting for me because of some of the gameplay that they get to offer, especially for the specs such as Enhancement Shaman. Though for Stormbringer, we first started off with an Elemental just to get you the basic idea of what a Stormbringer is like. A Stormbringer doesn't really have any flavor text, but you essentially conjure and harness a lightning in your hands, and you're going to be heavily leaning into lightning-based gameplay for both Elemental and Enhancement. Your main ability is going to be Tempest, where whenever you spend Maelstrom or Maelstrom Weapon as Enhancement, once you spend enough of that resource, your next Lightning Bolt becomes a Tempest. And recently they've actually improved the visuals as well as the audio of the Tempest ability. You can just hear the thunder, the echoes in the background, and that wasn't there before. It used to be just like a little zap, and it just kind of came and went very quickly, but now it has this echoing rumble and thunder, which I love to hear, and that is something you will notice every time you press this ability. It's just the audio change if you have the game sound on. But overall, Tempest is just going to be basically a much more upgraded version of a Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning that essentially does 2 in 1. It deals a ton of nature damage to your primary target and additional nature damage to every enemy within 8 yards, uncapped. This is probably one of the handful of few abilities that's actually absolutely uncapped in the amount of AoE damage that it can do, making Tempest a priority ability in single target or AoE situations. There is, however, a little bit of weirdness to Tempest, and you'll notice this is both Enhancement and Elemental, though I think you'll notice this as Elemental a little bit more than Enhancement. Tempest as an ability does not become a Lightning Bolt. It instead replaces your Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt is replaced by Tempest, but Tempest is not a Lightning Bolt. This means if you have any other talents such as, let's say, Stormkeeper, which makes your next Lightning Bolt instant cast, Tempest is not a Lightning Bolt, so you won't be able to get an instant cast off of this ability. And that is something you're going to have to pay attention to the whole time you're playing with the Tempest, because that's just not how the spec works at all. The same goes for Enhancement, but at least Enhancement can utilize Maelstrom weapon stacks in order to make Tempest an AoE ability, and that is the biggest benefit of that spec, because at least the ability can feel instacast. It does not have any instacast or any Lightning Bolt functionality for Elemental. And I will also talk about the gameplay of Elemental once we get through all the different talents, but yeah, there's some weirdness that has to do with Tempest. The idea behind it is very cool, but there are also some awkwardness behind it either way. But before we dive into that, let's get through the talents, starting off with the first row of Shocking Grasp. Nature, damaging critical strikes, reduce the target's movement by 50%. This one seems kind of okay. Just the passive slows can be good, especially if you cast a bunch of Chain Lightnings or Tempest on multiple enemies in AoE. Means you don't have to be slowing them down, but Shamans already have so many good tools to slow things down, whether it is with a knockback or Thunderstorm, or Frost Shocks to permanent slow enemies, or even an Earthbind Totem. So I wonder if maybe this one could be adjusted at some point with maybe a root or something to make it a little bit more effective. In the middle row we have another talent called Tempest, where you increase the critical strike chance of your nature spells by 10% and the critical strike damage of nature spells by 5%, which again will make you want to lean into nature heavy abilities. On the left hand side we have unlimited power, where spinning Maelstrom grants you 3% haste for 15 seconds. Stacking, gaining a new stack does not refresh the duration. Now this means whenever you spin Maelstrom for any reason, it grants you 3% haste. It doesn't mean you get 3% haste per a certain amount of Maelstrom spent, so if you're playing around Elemental Blast, it takes a little bit longer for you to build up Maelstrom to use the ability. But also what you could do is shift out of Elemental Blast, go with Earthshock Earthquake combo, and you actually get to fire off more Maelstrom based abilities back to back, which can really help you ramp up the damage and the haste buff provided by unlimited power ability. Hard to tell if that's actually what Shamans are going to end up doing, but there is a little bit of potential now that you could go into an Earthshock and Earthquake type of combo. In the next row we have Rolling Thunder, where you gain 1 stack of Stormkeeper every 50 seconds. This talent is a little bit different for enhancement, and we'll go over enhancement just a bit here. But this one kind of sort of works okay, but it's a bit randomized because it could just grant you a stack of Stormkeeper just out of the blue. And this can even happen while you already have Stormkeeper active. So if you already have 2 stacks of Stormkeeper and a proxy on extra charge, it doesn't give you 3 charges of Stormkeeper, it just refreshes that second charge that you have access to. So it makes the ability and using it a little bit more awkward than I expected it. I think there needs to be some kind of like a guaranteed way, like once you achieve, let's say, a certain proc, your next Earthshock or your Earthquake will grant you a stack of Stormkeeper, because then as a Shaman you can at least see it ahead of time and then control it. Then we have the middle row, which gives you quite a cool few set of options, with Storm Swell being kind of okay. When Tempest only strikes a single target, you gain Maelstrom, which makes it a single target talent, but then you have a more exciting version of Arc Discharge. When Tempest strikes more than 1 target, your next 3 Chain Lightning spells are instant cast and deal 75% more damage. A lot of Shamans have pointed out that technically Storm Swell is only good for single target, but in all the situations where you can hit multiple targets, you are always going to take Arc Discharge. So a lot of Shamans are hoping that they kind of combine the two together so it's not a choice node. Further down on the row we have Supercharge, where Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning elemental overloads have a 50% chance to cause an additional elemental overload. What this means is with your mastery, which allows your Chain Lightning, Ice Fury, Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt to have a small chance to trigger a second time on the same target, dealing up to 100% additional damage on Maelstrom if you are talented into things like Echo Chamber. But with things such as, let's say, Stormkeeper, you're guaranteed that your next ability is going to overcharge. So a single Lightning Bolt can actually have multiple abilities striking all at once. So with Supercharge, what you have is a chance every time you cast a Lightning Bolt where you can actually get 2 overloads. So there's a 50% chance when you do get an overload, if you have high enough mastery, you can get a second one. This means that Lightning Bolt, which get hit for 92,000 damage when it does crit because you get crit interactions as a Shaman, this makes Lightning Bolt, I think, a bit of a higher priority ability. Of course, you still want to gas things such as Lava Burst because you do get Master the Elements, which can buff the damage of the next Lightning Bolt. And if it does overload, then every single one of those Lightning Bolts is going to deal additional damage. But it does create a situation where Lightning Bolts are going to become a little bit of a higher priority ability, especially if you can get a bunch of overloads with them onto a singular target. And this is going to help bolster a proper lightning-oriented playstyle that Shamans are going to be able to play as a Stormbringer. Over in the next row, we got some defensive bonuses. Either after using Tempest, your next Chain Heal or Healing Surge will be instant and consume no mana if you need some healing with Surging Currents, or target struck by Tempest deal 10% less damage to the Shaman, which could be nice in a lot of PvE and raid situations. In the middle, we have a Conductive Energy, which is going to be a very, very powerful talent when it's working, but right now it isn't, though the idea behind it is quite strong. Lightning Rod targets now also take 20% of damage from the Tempest deal, so whenever your Tempest hits an enemy's, targets with the Lightning Rod effect, which is this talent right here, are going to take additional damage from a Tempest. Another benefit of this talent is that now Tempest also applies the Lightning Rod effect. This means that Tempest, Earthshock, Elemental Blast, and Earthquake mark a target as a Lightning Rod for 8 seconds. Lightning Rod take 20% of all damage you deal with Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning. It is assumed right now that Tempest, since it hits everything around the target, all enemies should get a Tempest debuff on them. And if that's how it works, Tempest also is completely uncapped in how many targets it can strike. So if a tank can group a bunch of enemies together, you hit them with a Tempest, everybody has a lightning rod, and every chain lightning you unleash on the target, everybody with the lightning rod also takes a portion of that damage, which can help you set up for some massively big AoE output. Continuing on with the final talent in the row, we have Voltaic Surge, where Crash Lightning, Chain Lightning, and Earthquake damage is all upgraded by 15% to make all its abilities a little bit better in AoE content. Now the final capstone ability is going to be Awakening Storms, which allows you to use your Tempest ability a lot more often. Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning have a chance to strike a target for additional nature damage, and every 3 times this effect occurs, the next Lightning Bolt is replaced by a Tempest. This means that as we attack our target, we get Awaken Storm procs, and after our third proc, our next Lightning Bolt is going to become a Tempest. But also there's a bit of an unintended interaction, at least I think it's an unintended interaction. You see, my Lightning Bolt hit as a normal Lightning Bolt, then I procced Awakening Storms, then I got a Lightning Bolt Overload, which caused me to go for another Lightning Bolt Overload. And because lightning bolts are essentially your Q1, it Qs me a second one, it procs, it Qs me another one, but I got a Tempest in between of those Qs, it also fires off a Tempest for free at my target. I don't think that that's how this ability is supposed to work. Just call me crazy, but I feel like something about the WoW in-game interactions, I feel like this isn't how Tempest is supposed to function under normal conditions. I think Tempest is meant to be an ability that replaces Lightning Bolt, but not something that can get cast automatically, though as of right now, if you get lucky with your Mastery procs, then it definitely can, which can give you a free Tempest, which gives you all the proc of our discharge and allows you to hard cast a Tempest right afterwards. If this is meant to be a playstyle for Shamans, this means that you almost never ever want to press Lava Burst ever again, and you want to spam as many Lightning Bolts as possible because the Lightning Bolts can trigger Tempest for free. If this is the intended interaction for Shaman, I'd be very surprised. But maybe this is meant to be a mechanic that's supposed to proc off of your mastery. I guess we'll just have to see if they have a blue post for it. But as it stands, that's just a very unique interaction. That being said, as for the gameplay, Stormbringer is a fun playstyle that really embraces a Lightning Bolt build, and I've enjoyed the Lightning Bolt playstyle back during Season 2 of Dragonflight when they had a tier set that perfectly supported it. That being said, it doesn't mean that the Lightning Bolt focused playstyles are not without issues. One, they are very immobile because you have to stand still and cast lightning bolts, whereas lava burst and fire focus gameplay has quite a bit of mobility. With a lightning bolt playstyle, you really have to manage your mobility, and the only time you can really move around is with Stormkeeper or maybe with other instant cast procs. Another weirdness about the whole lightning bolt and Tempest playstyle is, as you see, Tempest overwrites your next lightning bolt, and right now there's no real in-game ways to track it, like in terms of the amount of maelstrom you're spending to know exactly where you are on your maelstrom generation, or how many of those casts you do before a Tempest overwrites Lightning Bolt. Since Tempest does not get treated like a Lightning Bolt, if let's say you have a Stormkeeper and you're trying to go for a big Stormkeeper setup, you got all your debuffs, you got all your buffs, trying to go for bigger Lightning Bolts back to back, randomly Lightning Bolt is replaced with a Tempest. So now you have to hard cast a Tempest before you can continue with instant casts of your Lightning Bolts. So there's a little bit of awkwardness when that happens when you're trying to go for a big setup, and then it feels like Tempest kind of gets in the way. But it wouldn't if maybe, let's say, Tempest replaced another ability such as Lava Burst. So maybe they could adjust it so maybe this playstyle doesn't want to press Lava Burst all that often, but a Tempest is going to overwrite a Lava Burst whenever it is active. So then at least you have access to your Lightning Bolts and Chain Lightning, and then Tempest is available on a different ability. Or simply give Tempest a whole nother button for you to press instead, so then you can just dedicate a specific button for Tempest and press it whenever it is active. But the biggest parts of this, I think, is going to be down to mobility. I really do think that whenever you're playing a Lightning Shaman build, the lack of mobility is going to be something that's really going to set some people off. Like, there's a lot of cool elements when you do get mobility, such as with Arc Discharge when Tempest hits multiple targets. That's very fun. To be able to cast 3 Chain Lightnings while on the move is awesome. But that's only in situations where you can hit more than one target, but if you're in pure single target situation, you have to play Storm Swell. Maybe if they were to give Tempest a couple of things. One, not make it overwrite a Lightning Bolt so you can have access to all of your lightning spells at all times, which I think is going to make the playstyle feel better. But also maybe if they gave Tempest the ability to move while you're casting your Tempest. I think that would be very interesting as a mechanic. because it allows you as a shaman to fully harness lightning, where lightning doesn't even stop you from standing still, it lets you move around while you're casting this ability. But otherwise, I really enjoy the thematics and the playstyle of the Stormbringer. And I love it on Elemental, but I gotta say it's only better as enhancement. For enhancement, Tempest is a little bit different as it doesn't get treated like a lightning bolt, but at least it can benefit from all of your Maelstrom based abilities. As in, whenever you build up Maelstrom against an enemy target, and then you end up spending Maelstrom weapon stacks cause your next ability to become instant cast, and that also applies for your Tempest as well. And having an instant cast Tempest feels so good, it makes me wish that Elemental also gotten it because it looks amazing, it gains the benefits from your Maelstrom weapon, but then also enhancement gains a couple other benefits from the Stormbringer hero spec on its own. First of all, down in the middle row we have Rolling Thunder, where Tempest now summons a Nature Feral Spirit for a handful of seconds. So these are going to be the Elemental Feral Spirits, with the Nature Feral Spirit being the Lightning Spirit. Lightning Spirits buff your nature damage, but 20% while they're active. So whenever you do get a Tempest proc, you get a Lightning Wolf that gets you additional Maelstrom, that lets you spend more Maelstrom on Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolts to hopefully get more Tempest procs. Another weird thing you have, and this is not a functional talent, is going to be the Conducted Energy. This talent is what allows Lightning Rod to be spread to multiple targets as Elemental, and Enhancement gets to borrow the Lightning Rod ability as part of its toolkit when playing the Stormbringer. Tempest, Lightning Bolt, and Elemental Blast and Chain Lightning make your target a Lightning Rod for 8 seconds. Lightning Rod targets take 20% of all damage you deal with Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, which allows you to spread Lightning Rods on multiple targets to really absorb yourself in the lightning and thunder. Overall, I think I like Stormbringer a ton. I do think there are some clear ways that could solve some of those issues for Elemental Shaman, but otherwise I don't necessarily hate it, even though through awkwardness I think it looks really good. Now, the final hero spec we take a look at is the Totemic. Totemics excel at unlocking the full power of their totems, strengthening them and gaining access to new ones. They have honed their imbuement abilities and skills to further improve their combat capabilities. Totemics are going to be embracing totems, but also are going to focus on enhancing their abilities, very similar to how Farseer is looking to enhance the output of them as a caster. Totemic is going to help you enhance yourself as enhancement and restoration respectively. And the Totemic is going to be a little bit different for enhancement and restoration, with enough clear differences where we are going to have to take a bit to talk about both of these versions. Starting off with enhancement, you get Surging Totem. That's also going to be an ability for restoration, though what this ability does is going to be very different. What Surging Totem does is it replaces your Wind Fury Totem, where you summon a totem at your feet that creates a tremor immediately, and every 5 seconds within 30 yards, it keeps tremoring against enemies for physical damage, with this damage reduced beyond 5 targets. So the way that looks is, as you walk up to an enemy, you get him into combat, you drop down a totem, and you'll see the totem will actually pulse, doing damage to nearby foes. And that's essentially the totem. It basically is a more active version of Wind Fury that you will have to apply a little bit more regularly. Instead of it being there every 2 minutes, you have to keep placing it down every 25 seconds. So at the very least, while there is a cooldown for Surging Totem, it does change the way your Wind Fury weapon and Wind Fury Totem works. With the passive, Wind Fury Weapon Enchant, the one that goes in your weapons, now grants the effects of Wind Fury Totem to all nearby party members within 30 yards. So essentially it upgrades the Shaman to be the buff of Wind Fury. While the totem basically gets an entirely new usage, it is something you want to drop down to get the most amount of value from, and it does AoE damage while also enhancing some of your shamanistic abilities. Which I think is a really cool way. It kind of just allows enhancement to really master the fact that they can imbue their weapons, and you basically become the buff of Wind Fury, no longer needing a totem, which makes it kind of cool actually. For the actual talents though, we have a lot of non-functional but a lot of cool ideas here, like Lively Totems. Lava Lash has a chance to summon a Searing Totem that'll attack enemies within 8 seconds. In the middle row we have ways to upgrade and amplify your Surging Totem. While Surging is active, your damage and healing is increased by 3%, or while Ascendance is active, Surging Totem is 150% more effective, which makes you want to lean into Ascendance-based playstyles. Next we have Totemic Rebound, where Storm Strike has a chance to unleash a Surging Bolt at your Surging Totem, increasing the totem's damage by 10%, and then redirecting the bolt of your target for nature damage. This damage bonus effect can stack. So basically, the more Storm Strike you use, the more you can buff up your totem to make him do additional damage, plus it will do additional nature damage to whatever target you're currently picking. In our next row we have Reactivity, which actually buffs the Lively Totems talent. Frost Shocks, empowered by Hailstorm, and Fire Novas cause your Searing Totem to shoot a volley of fireballs at up to 5 nearby enemies, which grants you a little bit extra additional AoE, and I'm very excited to check out the Searing Totem once it's active. This talent is actually functional Wind Barrier. If you have a totem active, your totem grants you a shield, absorbing basically 133,000 damage for 30 seconds every 30 seconds. And yes, I checked it, no, it does not stack whenever you do try to get to multiple totems out at the same time. And on extra, we have oversized totems, which increases the size and radius of your totems by 15%, and the health of your totems by 30%, which could be really good in PvP. Or you can go with Swift Recall, successfully removing a harmful effect with Tremor Totem or Poison Cleansing Totem, or controlling an enemy with Capacitor and Earth Grab reduces the cooldown of that totem used by 5 seconds. This effect cannot occur more than once every 20 seconds, so this gives you a little bit more cooldown reduction for your totems. In an extra, we have things such as Earth Surge, where casting Sundering within 40 yards of your surging totem causes it to create a tremor at 200% effectiveness in the target area. While Totemic Coordination increases your critical strike chance of your Searing Totem attacks by 15% and its critical strike damage by 30%, making the Searing Totem a little bit more involved. In the middle row, we have either Supportive Imbuements, which increases the critical strike chance of your Flame Tongue and its critical strike damage by a certain amount, or you can go with Pulse Capacitor, which increases the damage of your Surging Totem by 25%. Further down the row, we have Imbuing Mastery, which increases the chance for Windfear weapon to trigger by 10% and increases damage by 15%, which will likely make Shamans want to play into Doom Winds and maybe have it synergize with the Ascendant's base playstyles. At the capstone, we have Whirling Elements, which imbues your totem with additional elemental modes that orbit around your surging totem. Your certain abilities consume the modes for enhanced effects. You have the Air mode, which allows your next Storm Strike or Wind Strike to deal 25% increased damage and damages one nearby enemy for 75% effectiveness. With the Earth, it causes your next Thunder or Elemental Blast to refund 12 seconds of its cooldown, and for Fire, it increases the critical strike chance of your next Fire Nova or Lava Lash by 15% and its critical strike damage by 30%. Which is fairly easy to integrate. As you drop down the totem, you walk up to a target, use abilities, and the elements, and rather the modes, do get consumed, giving you various different effects to work with. Which is just a nice passive way of you being able to gain additional value whenever you do drop down your Surging Totem down. Now, the Surging Totem ability is going to be quite different for Restoration Shaman. For Restoration, we immediately notice that Surging Totem is different because it now replaces the ability of Healing Rain, where the totem will now automatically cast Healing Rain on a nearby ally, with that Healing Rain being 30% more effective than a normal Healing Rain. The way this works is the totem is a bit smart. It will actually follow the targets of Riptide to place the Healing Rain on. Even if you end up, let's say, healing another ally that's maybe out of position or out of a group, the totem will still focus on whoever has the Riptide, so you could do some focus healing on a nearby ally, while the totem will primarily focus on a big group of allies. It is quite an expensive totem, however, because Healing Rain is an expensive ability, but it seems to function with all the other talents and all the other abilities that can amplify the healing of your Healing Rain. From there on, however, we move on to Lively Totems, which is also, like I said, a lot of these talents are going to be quite different. Healing Tide Totem, Healing Stream Totem, Cloudburst Totem, Mana Tide Totem, and Spirit Link Totem cast a free instant Chain Heal when you summon them. This is the tier set back from Shadowlands, which actually was a very popular version of the tier set, so it's being brought back as a talent with Totemic. With reactivity, your healing spells cause your next Healing Stream Totem to heal a nearby ally immediately at 50% effectiveness, while Cloudburst Totem stores 25% additional healing. With Totemic Rebound, Chain Heal will now jump to a nearby totem once it reaches its maximum amount of targets, causing it to bounce to an additional ally one more time, giving Chain Heal a little bit additional value and kind of functioning pretty well with Lively Totems once both of these talents are actually both functional. With Imbuing Mastery, you increase the duration of your Earth Living effect by 6 seconds, which will make you want to play into your Earth Living weapon. In the middle row, we have a new imbuement called Supportive Imbuements, where you learn a weapon imbue of Tide Color's Guard. This one applies on your shield. And the cool part is all these imbuement abilities have a bonus effect to them. Like for example, when I use Earth Living Weapon, it's going to empower my weapon to have this green glow. But if you take a look at it very closely at my shield, you'll also notice that my shield also has a bit of a green glow around it. Primarily, if you look at the back of the totem right now, you will see there's a slight green glow. Hopefully they'll upgrade it so it's a little bit more noticeable, but I think it's a really cool part about being a Totemic Shaman, how you can imbue both of your weapon and your shield before combat. I think it's a really cool flavor choice. Over in the bottom right side, we have Earth Surge, where allies affected by your Earthen Wall Totem, Ancestral Protection Totem, and Earth Living effect receive 10% additional healing from you, which is actually quite a strong effect. And then we have Totemic Coordination, where chain heals from your totems are 30% more effective. In a final capstone, Whirling Elements is very similar to an enhancement version, but the elemental modes that orbit around the totem are a little bit different. We have the Water mode, where your next Healing Wave or Healing Surge also heals an ally inside of your healing range at 100% effectiveness, which is quite strong. The Air mode causes the cast time of your next healing spell to be reduced by 40%, which is also quite good. And with Earth, your next Chain Heal applies Earth Living at 150% effectiveness to all targets hit. I don't know if the Earth mode functions with your totem's Chain Heal. If it does, that's going to be a fantastic combo that allows you to affect multiple targets with a Chain Heal that you don't even need to cast yourself. But even if you do end up casting Chain Heal, that could be an opportunity to apply Earth Living to a bunch of allies, which gives you a very different type of gameplay as a restoration. And overall, I don't actually hate Totemic for resto, at least the idea behind it. Sadly, a huge portions of this hero spec just aren't functional at the moment. You can kind of sort of play it as enhancement, but as a restoration, I think there's just not enough there to really functionally experience it. But the idea behind it, I like a lot. How it applies and works off of your imbuement abilities. How it buffs up your totems that allows your totems to have additional gameplay. And I feel like it just takes it in a different direction compared to the Riptide focused Farseer resto, which I actually kind of enjoyed. So if you enjoyed the Restoration Shaman back from the last raid of Shadowlands or last few tiers of Shadowlands, then there's a good chance you'll enjoy this playstyle, but I think there's a lot of meat on the bones in this one that could potentially result in some fantastic gameplay. Thematics behind it though, I feel like Totemic is probably the most muted out of the three, where one gets to summon and call upon their ancestors and the other gets to summon lightning and thunder on the whim. Totemic is a little bit more subtle. You play around with totems, and I think there's going to be enough gameplay where as a shaman you will notice that kind of gameplay. Though visually and thematically, I don't think this one is really out there. I don't think not as many people are going to notice that, oh, that's a Totemic Shaman. Where with Stormbringer and Farseer, they're going to notice the ancestors, they're going to notice the lightning, but with the Totemic, it's a little bit more subtle. But I feel like there's enough gameplay additions for both enhancement and restoration to really make you feel and embrace the Totemic, and the different gameplay elements that it brings with it, I think is more than enough to make Totemic stand on its own 2 feet as a solid hero talent spec for the class of Shaman. But with that being said, that's going to be the entirety of all the different hero talents that are available to the class of Shaman, between Totemic, the Stormbringer, and the Farseer. And overall, I gotta say, I'm very excited about the class of Shaman. I'm still very much hopeful that they end up doing some adjustments for Tempest, for Elementals specifically, but even then, I feel like there's so much meat in the bones when it comes to Shamans that the class itself is just in such a good spot going forward. And all the different gameplay elements offered by all 3 hero specs personally get me excited to crank out raids and dungeons once the War Within expansion officially launches. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I think about all the different 3 specs of Shaman. I want to hear what you guys think about them in the comments down below. Between Totemic, Stormbringer, and the Farseer, which one of the 3 gets you excited for the most? And which hero specs are you likely to pair together? Are you more excited for the Totemic Restoration, the Tempest Enhancement, or the Farseer Shaman? Or how are you most likely going to end up pairing your Shaman with the different hero specs for the next expansion? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. Join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.